Welcome to the J3U University Podcast. I'm your host, John Jewett.
And I'm your co-host, Luke Miller.
Our mission is to elevate the physique coaching standard
and to bring the highest level of competitor to the stage.
Let's jump into today's episode. Burnout, identity crisis, mentorships you need or mentorships that you had that were successful. This is what Luke and I are addressing this week, as it is Men's Health Week. So Luke and I can be selfish and just focus on us as males and also you, or if you're a female listening, hang in there because you might get some insights into your man's brain and how he thinks and his struggles. So we want to address some of the mental components around being a high-performing individual, or even moving from a low-performing to a high-performing. What might be some barriers and bottlenecks that you might be facing that Luke and I have personally faced, and how we overcame those things.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing to kind of peek behind the door, because I don't think a lot of people are quick to talk about this, because from like a public persona perspective, we're supposed to give this, I don't want to say front, but like if you are on the more successful side, like you want to seem that way to everybody involved, or that's on the outside, because it can be something that's attractive from a business perspective, right? But I think there's a lot to kind of break down from like a questions perspective of what does it truly look like to kind of pull the best out of yourself. And I think some of the places that I like to think back to, and correct me if you think like this is a bad place to start, but kind of where you came from when people didn't believe in what you saw, right? And where people didn't believe in what your outlook on life was and what you wanted to accomplish and what you wanted to make happen. Because I think a lot of times these high performers develop it during those years of like this capacity to become what they end up becoming. Would you agree?
No, definitely. I think you get pieces of the person you will eventually be when you are younger. And there's just a lot to figure out at that time. And then who's in that circle might not align well with that person you could eventually become. And there's just a lot of just lack of clarity at that time. Like for myself being younger, I've always competed, was athlete, or all in on things that I was interested in. Of course, there was a lot of rotation of things that I was interested in, from, man, you name it. I did competitive paintball, to track, then getting into like powerlifting, and then into now bodybuilding, or even, cars. Like I was obsessed with things that I was into. Now, like as those people are in your life and you're kind of moving through these different things that you do, some of them they're not about either. Like when I first get into bodybuilding, like my parents just saw this as like a temporary thing that I hope I just grow out of. Same with like, my ex, partner, she wasn't about that either, because the risk was there. And what does future look like with kids, and are you going to be around, like with bodybuilding, what it entails. So there was just a lot of fight back in that. Yeah. And, through those times, it's when you're facing a lot of the adversity to everyone's telling you no, it does make you question, like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, and should I be having a plan B in this, and put my time into something else. Mm-hmm. And so it's a lot to figure out at those times. And looking back, it's you need the right people in your corner that are making sure that they are building you up towards a positive outcome. And I had a lot of people that were just tearing you down in a negative way. Mm-hmm. But it's a tough balance, right? Because you don't want to be unrealistic with what you're trying to do. I don't mean unrealistic, but also like you could be interested in something that is just truly not the right thing for you, and need someone to guide you, even though you're so damn stubborn. I think that's part of it too, is overcoming, being stubborn versus like this passion that actually has potential. That's a tough one to sort out.
Yeah, it's a very tough one to sort out. And I think when we kind of start to kind of peek behind the door, I think a lot of this drives, and I know for me, this is what drives me into places that I kind of had to take a step back and reevaluate where I'm headed and then make decisions to move in the right direction. Because I tend to, I know when I first got into the bodybuilding space, like I'm a very one-track minded person, right? There's a reason my original brand was No Switch Fitness, like no off switch in the pursuit of results. I played competitive golf for a little over 10 years, and I thought it was the only thing I was going to do. And when I got out of that and got into fitness and bodybuilding, and I was like 140 pounds starting in it. And like, you know, the first few shows you do, you're maybe 160 pounds soaking wet on stage. And like, people don't see that journey of what you are wanting to accomplish. And at that time, you don't fully maybe understand what it is, and it just kind of develops. But I'm kind of one of those people that if you give me a challenge, I'm not afraid of it. I'm the person that tends to like stand up to it. And it's a good thing and a bad thing, because it builds resiliency, but it also, it leads to quite a bit of burnout. And I think that that's where I can push myself into places that aren't productive. And it's because of what I feel around me feels like everybody expects me to not make it. And I do think that I know what I'm capable of behind closed doors. And that's kind of where this starts to lead to, is when you start to get to a place of burnout. I found that surrounding yourself with the right people is what allows you to pull out of it. And I think it's kind of gets into the mentorship of what does a good system and what does a good mentor look like.
I want to ask you, Luke, because I mean, people might have heard you speak to this before, but you know, you got to a very high level in golf, which from what you've explained, it was all encompassing. Like weekends or traveling, you know, mom was trying to sort out it all with just pretty much, it's a very much a full-time job already, and not even at a professional level. But
yeah,
was there ever a time within that you were burnout, or mom got burnout too, right? And just for context here, this was, you know, this is a single mom raising Luke, right? So she's doing it all, which I'm sure like those that don't have that same mentality as you could get burnt out along the way. Were there times for you to get burnt out, or mom, like throughout that process?
No, I think it was so kid-like, the passion and pursuit of it, that there was never really burnout with the process of golf. I think it was more expectations that I had placed upon myself that led to me not continuing to pursue it. I grew up in an area that had a lot of high caliber golfers. I was kind of like in a pocket down in Mobile where like a lot of my friends that I traveled with all play professionally nowadays, right? And so I had a meniscus injury my senior year of high school that kind of took off the table a lot of the higher caliber schools that I was potentially going to play for. And that level of like letdown that I wasn't going to one of these high caliber schools, and that my only options left on the table were like small Division I or Division II schools, was kind of like in a 18-year-old's brain, proof to me that I potentially wasn't going to have the skills in order to make it. And so I just didn't have the right people around me at the time to tell me that that was unbelievably false, because like the college years in golf, like for those who are familiar, are extremely developmental in transitioning your game from high level junior amateur golf into professional ranks. And so it wasn't burnout for me. It was almost like the identity crisis for me. Like I spent every waking moment of the last 10 years, from the age of 8 years old to 18, doing anything that I could to be the best golfer I can. And then this is where I'm ending up type of a deal. And I think that's why I actually fully removed myself. For those who don't know, I didn't touch a club for 10 years after that moment. And that's my full dive into bodybuilding was like this rebuilding of myself with a new identity through bodybuilding, right? And interestingly enough, bodybuilding taught me how bad it is to have an identity that's tied to something like that. But that's what it was for me, man. Like it's probably the biggest regret I'll ever have, but I think it taught me so much into what it looks like to actually build a productive process that leads to success in different avenues of life. And yeah, I think that's probably more what it was. It's probably more identity related than it was burnout.
I can see that. That's a huge shift. And I think within that segment of that transition was probably the biggest struggle. And like, who was your inner circle group then? Like, did you have a golfing coach that was guiding that, or was it still just like you and mom during that time?
Yeah.
And
So
you just a lot in your head. Would you do something different at that time?
yeah, it kind of all happened at the wrong time. Like I was in the process of switching coaches. So I hadn't really built that relationship with the new coach yet, where he would like step in and be that person to say, hey, like, excuse my French, but get your shit together. Like, this is potential for you. And then on top of that, my mom's not really the push you to do something you don't want to do type of person. She's more like the, I support you in whatever it is. And so I think it was just, I didn't really have the right people. And I tend to be, while I am extroverted, I tend to be a bit of a loner in my pursuits. Like I'll just dig myself in a hole and just work and figure it out. And so that's kind of where that led to that, because, and this is, I think this leads so much into kind of what I do now, because when you look at like high success people, like, and you feel this a lot throughout different periods of life of like, and John, you know this very well, when you're trying to build something that's bigger than yourself, which is the whole goal, my whole goal in starting my original business was to build something bigger than myself. This is kind of what J3U University has become. It's what J3U coaching has become. And you have all of these people that start to depend on you. It becomes a very heavy weight to bear. And it's not something that you let go of lightly, to the point that you'll detriment your own self in order to make sure that the outcomes happen. And I think a lot of that happens because of when I failed in early life in my early pursuits, the now work level that I try to pursue is out of that will never happen again. And then it becomes something when I get to the burnout level that becomes negative to the environment around me.
Yeah, I can relate around that. I think with being, I think if you look at a lot of people that are high performing, there are a lot of like do-it-yourself type people. Mm-hmm. And when you just are trying to, everyone is depending on you because you are that person that does it all. You really need to be able to pivot and bring in some people that can like support what you're doing, that are like-minded. And I think this goes back to, developing your own inner circle. Cause I'm very much like you, I love control and I want to just do it myself and not have to wait around for other people to do it. And that is to my own weakness as well, because I end up doing things that I shouldn't be doing, that I'm not great at. And to really build up to be bigger, whether it's in bodybuilding or business, bringing in other people and having to let go some of that control is freeing for one, but it's truly how you can like fully grow. It's just like when, I brought Mark in to help partner with J3U, and then yourself to help with the education. Then we now have like Abby and Emmanuel doing our, helping with sales and content creation, and Dylan now supporting us as well. So now this group, this network expanded to where you're not having to do so much and everything riding on you. And that's when it's like, gosh, it's like from morning to night, it's nonstop, because you wear all the hats in your business or your bodybuilding endeavor. And when you can finally breathe, like, man, that's when it is fully is freeing. So yeah, I think that was a big mistake earlier on, is support, and then also balancing like dependency. And when you have a good support system, you're freed up from that feeling of a lot of the dependency that everyone's riding just on you alone. Because it's nice when you feel like you have people that have your back. And it's easiest to swing back into only wanting to be independent, right? Like, man, this is all on me still. It's like, no, it's not. Like, you do have people that are in your circle that have your back if things are to fail. Thanks everyone for tuning in to today's podcast. Are you struggling to hit your peak on show day? Feeling lost in the off season? Upgrade your coaching game with J3 University. Our program covers everything from off season to contest prep to peak week, all based from real client results. Along with our comprehensive physique curriculum, you'll also get access to our 4 rooms with our J3U team to answer any questions you have and live Q&A sessions to further your coaching and athlete experience. We are the source of education for top IFBB pros and coaches. Join us to elevate the coaching standard at J3 University. Let's get back to today's podcast.
And it's funny how the things that were problems a year ago, when you lean into this, like no longer start to become problems. And especially when you surround yourself with people that have like the I truly want shit out of life type of people. Like that is, to me, the difference maker. Because it's like, it's not just pulling anyone into your circle. It's the pulling someone in who has an expertise that you don't have, where you can not only learn from them, but they can benefit your environment in a positive net outcome, but also have the viewpoint of, I really want to achieve something with what we're working on. And then that pulls everyone forward, right? The standards that we hold ourselves to. And it's just something that, from a self-development standpoint, I think is massive, because the problems we had a year ago are no longer the same problems that we're talking about as far as getting to the next level. And then I know next year will be the same. And it's because we keep elevating that inner circle of people that we have around us. And I think it's starts to spread into multiple different places. And I think, John, one thing I wanted to ask you is how you have learned to separate, and maybe you have it, and maybe this is something that we can talk about, you as the athlete, and then you as the business owner, and then you as like John the person, the things outside of those two that live, and kind of how that identity relationship has developed for you and how you view it now. Because I think it's something that honestly allows you to be more successful when you do it well.
When you first start, I think that this goes back to like earlier on, is your identity kind of lines with a thing that you do and that you're interested in. And you'll have a lot of people that start maybe noticing you because of that thing, whatever it is, whether you're playing football and you're now, well, that's John, the football player that's really good at football, and it becomes your identity. Or Luke's the, soon to be pro golfer, and that's his identity. So you're relying in your own identity from what others are perceiving you to be, when that's not how it should be. And you really need to create your identity around something that's going to be sustainable, or you'll have constant loss of identity when you do have failures, because none of this stuff that we do potentially will last forever, or the stuff that you do won't be able to last at the level that you do it at forever, right? Like maybe you're at peak golf. Well, that's going to decline at some time, even though you can maybe keep golfing till you're 80 or 90 years old, right? But you could lose something in that. So how do you make that identity sustainable when your interests shift or your physique changes, goals evolve? You don't want to do the same thing anymore. Then I'm sure, like, can't bodybuild forever. So all these people that see me as John the bodybuilder and seeing them again after you stop, you're like, what happened to you? Like, why are you so small now? Yeah, sure. That's a fear of a lot of bodybuilders that are out there. And then it's like a challenge to you as a person. Like, I'm no longer that same person. And I think that's when you do have to redefine what you're seeing as your identity.
Yeah.
And make it not so segmented even. Like, it's not just you as the business person or the bodybuilder or even the husband. I think your identity should come down to your core values as a man of, how do you want to treat people? Leading by example, just showing up consistently for people, and, be the person that others can rely on, and building people up rather than making people feel small. And that's what I've always tried to carry out through all my endeavors and how I interact with everyone. And I picked a lot of that up from my own dad, which going back to like, who are your mentors and where do you pick things up from? And of course we might inherit some of the negatives from our parents, but at least picking up a lot of the positives that, anything that I did. And like you could speak to your mom, Luke, is that they always showed up. Like, man, my dad was at like every single event that I was in, whether karate and gymnastics, I mean, you name it, powerlifting, bodybuilding, like he was always there. I'm sure the same for your mom. Like he showed up, and that's like a core value piece of him. And so that's the type of man that I'd want to be, which that supports like good mentorship and how you want to carry yourself out at. So you can still like have some identity, of course, as being the athlete, but don't let your output define you, of like the thing that you do define you. Let your character lead the way in that. And that's kind of where I fall now. So, yes, I'm into bodybuilding, I'm into cars, I'm into several different things, but that's not who I am as a core value person. Yeah. And it takes a long time, I think, to get there, because we start off with just that very young, lower level of like, these are things that I'm into and that creates my status. But again, it's a lower level of connection with people. And so transitioning that identity can, in a positive manner, is where I think it will also lead to more success. So when you have those values clearly defined, and that's where I also just figure out, who do I want to bring into business? Like, they have to meet those same core values. And that's what's also going to make it sustainable too. It's so important with J3U. Like, I don't need the best educator or the best bodybuilder aligning with J3U. I need the person that's going to have those values, as that's what's going to be able to sustain the business of how we're able to treat people and build them up. Because that's what people will remember forever, not whether, we were, 1% better than the next guy in information or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I think it's so interesting because like my skill set has changed a lot over the last couple of years. Of like, I still coach obviously, but I'm such more in the mentorship role now of like supporting all the J3U coaches and making sure that they're growing. And it's unbelievable how quick people can expand their abilities when they do align on the moral, ethical values level, right? Because they just get it, and they treat people the same way that you would want them treated in your coaching process or throughout the university process or the education process. And this allows us to expand our impact. And I think that's kind of where, from a mentorship perspective, like creating, and you'll hear me talk about systems a lot, I aim to build better systems for other people because I know it'll allow them to operate at a level that I do, or even better in certain areas because of their areas of expertise. And so you'll see like different aspects of, like, I've talked about block scheduling a lot in my content or in YouTube or a bunch of other things. Like, I've been helping people in my inner circle build block schedules for themselves so that they can operate more efficiently, or even just small things on communication, like how we talk to people, emotional intelligence. Like, I talk to the coaches weekly about how we talk to people and build them up and create better athletes over the long term, because the outcomes on stage come as a product of not only the X's and O's of coaching, but how we build up these people to be better individuals in their daily lives. So it's an interesting dynamic to kind of have a massive view shift on, because education in this space gets very X's and O's focused. But I think when you step into that role of mentorship, you see there's so much more than just X's and O's in creating better individuals.
Yeah, and it's hard to be a part of at times with social media. Yeah. Because it is such a negative space, and how people go about building up their own image. And it is the exact opposite of what you want from supportive male roles in the industry. Of people are, gaining, like, clout chasing based on demeaning others, exposing others' weaknesses, and it's not pushing everyone forward, just in how we want to treat people. And it's why, like, I've never wanted to do content around that, because it doesn't align with my core values. So I'd say, don't feel like you need to chase that as well because you see someone growing fast based on, demeaning others and treating others poorly, as that's not the type of like long-standing sustainable relationships that are going to really last. And to really do that, again, you have to treat people well. And just see, it's so easy now to cross those boundaries in social media, but uphold those values as after it's all over, like the bodybuilding's done, your business is done. Like, what are you really left with? And it's just the relationships you had, and you want some ones that are a really good quality and that it's going to be a lot more meaningful in your life too. So not to get on a huge like philosophical like aspect here, but that is what it does come down to. A lot of this of like the development as a man, just as a person, of where you want to see yourself going. Luke, to throw this back to you, what do you wish someone told you 10 years ago, back when you were just trying to figure things out? Or what would you, I guess, say back to yourself then?
Yeah, it's tough to pick one thing. I tend to lean kind of more towards always being a student. Like, I think there's been times, I don't think recently, but I think maybe in those earlier years where I felt like I had it figured out. Right. And while I've been a lot more open about like, there's so many different ways to do things and you can achieve goals in many different ways. And a lot of that comes just from like understanding of knowledge. I think that's probably what I would have given myself 10 years ago, is that if you aim to learn from the highly successful people always in your circle, no matter whether it was directly related to what you're doing or not, I do feel like that would have fast-tracked me even more than I was. Because when you're young, you're like setting out on these goal sets and you're wanting to achieve them and be the person that is the achiever, right? And so like the ego can kind of start to go up as you start to achieve these goals. But in reality, it's like we all learn from each other in different facets. We just don't realize it until we have the emotional maturity to realize it.
Yeah, I think if I would go back, I'll be 28 at that time. So I would have been still doing my master's degree, and I would be not even a pro yet, be an amateur. So I think in that space, I was still so isolated and doing it just the way I thought it needed to be done.
Yeah.
I think I would have told myself that find the people in those segments that you're interested in, whether it I was trying to be a dietitian and in business, find someone that's doing the thing that you want to be doing successfully and start making those relationships with that person. Same with bodybuilding. You need to network and create relationships with people, and that is what's going to help really expand your knowledge, because I was just so much I'll learn it on my own. And that was very limiting to me. So I think having successful people in a variety of areas that I was trying to get into with business and bodybuilding would have fast-tracked me to being a lot more successful earlier on, and not so closed off to it. And I think, too, like if you're earlier on, you don't have a lot of money to hire all these coaches and business coaches and life coaches, but there's so much free resources out there. And I think a lot of people are willing to give back, if they see something in you that reminded them of themselves earlier on. I've had people that just talk to me nonstop and have become friends just through having conversations that I've given them a lot back as well in the form of mentorship without having to pay me anything, just because their rapport and their drive and everything reminded me of myself earlier on. So you just want to help those people be successful. And now we're in such a great age of information and technology that there's so much available to you. Like in our J3U forum, it's $20 a month. well, you can ask us anything in there. I mean, anything about business, your bodybuilding. And Luke and I, we've written like huge posts in there back to people. That would have been so huge when I was earlier on, to be able to ask some top bodybuilding coaches and pros, like, here's my plan or what I'm thinking. Like, what do you think about this? Some people have asked us, like, hey, I really want to get into coaching. Like, I'm 19 years old. Like, where do I start? And to have someone like, here's like the guidance around that would have been massive. And for $20 a month, like, I could afford that. I was spending $20 a month easily on some bullshit supplement that I didn't need. So, we're in an age where like all this stuff's available. There's business programs that are really cheap to be part of. I think Mark Cole out of Australia, I believe he has like kind of a similar monthly subscription that's low cost to get people involved and just having conversations, like kind of like our forum. So, man, there's just a number of resources out there to make it happen, to get good mentorship from great men, leaders that can help build you up in all these areas that you are interested in. So we'll wrap. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go. I was just going to say, it's so fulfilling to see some of the answers back in the forums. 'Cause like we get people come back with, I won my show, or I presented my best package ever, or I had my clients come back. And I've even had, I had someone reach out a couple weeks ago that I mentored them for, I want to say 5 or 6 months. And they said they've 3x their business since they've stopped, since they've implemented that stuff and just been working it on themselves. And it's that's so huge. I've given someone a livelihood. So it's when you create meaningful relationships with people, and that's the last piece I wanted to add before we log off, is meaningful relationships, right? People can tell when you're trying to use them for something. Meaningful relationships go so much further because 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the line, when they can potentially provide value back to you in some different way, they'll be so much more willing to because of that meaningful relationship that you've created. But tell them about next week, because next week's an interesting one.
Yeah, next week, when a check-in goes off the rails, what to do. Learning how to apply coaching tactics is what we're going to be getting into. So we all have those bad check-ins that come through as a coach, but also from the athlete side, you have weeks that don't go great. So we'll dive into that next week, and tune in for that one. It'll be a solid one. And thank you all for tuning into this one, and we'll see you then.